Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink program. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, chef Santiago Lastra reveals why his latest opening was inspired by Mexico's down-to-earth fondas.
The idea of Fonda as well is to be able to be some sort of hub or exhibition for Mexican contemporary art.
Also on the program, we go foraging for fresh herbs in Finland.
Today we found 13 edible plants, and I would say you could find like 25 edibles from this park.
Plus, we celebrate a pint-sized but accomplished neighbourhood restaurant in London. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. Plenty of people are often on the lookout for the most authentic version of a cuisine, but does that need to mean they should only focus on down-to-earth type of spots in their search? Chef Santiago Lastra has always been a proponent of respecting the Mexican flavours of his upbringing, but he also believes in staying true to his own fine dining training. His first restaurant in London, Col, has become a point of reference when it comes to high-end Mexican cuisine, all made with a radical belief in only using local ingredients to recreate traditional flavours. But for his new opening Fonda, he didn't want to just replicate the formula. While the idea was to make it more accessible and welcoming for regulars, he also remained faithful to his unique style. Taking inspiration from the country's fondas, unassuming restaurants that are part of people's daily life, he has created a spot that incorporates the homely feel of this cultural institution, all the while spotlighting some of the country's best emerging designers and delivering bold dishes. Santiago joined me in the studio to tell me more.
For me, it's about something that is bigger than just a restaurant. Like, I moved here to London because I wanted to share the meaning of quality of Mexican culture, Mexican food, not only in the UK, but like in the world. Like, that's like my dream. I'm a bit of an ambassador of Mexico, and I just put myself that quest. And if you have only one restaurant, it's just a certain amount of people that can try it. Col is more a fine dining restaurant, where it's more of a special occasion. So you go there when we have regulars that they come like every season. So they will come like 3 times a year, 4 times a year. We have other regulars. There's one guy called Robin that he's been in the restaurant for 36 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's amazing. But it's nothing, we don't have like people that comes like every week or every day, you know? So there's always been in my mind this thought of what it will happen if we have a place where people can go every day. Or when people don't have to book in advance for so long, that we could just show up and have some great food, a la carte, Mexican, and potentially to get to more people. So that's why we're opening the second restaurant. It's not that I'm like addicted to opening restaurants or anything. It's more like, how can we get it to more people, and how can we make somewhere where you can just go a little bit more accessible than Col, you know?
Well, and it is called Fonda, and I would like to ask you to explain to us what a Fonda really is and what it means in Mexican culture and for you personally.
Fonda is like a Mexican eatery. It's like some sort of trattoria or bistro. It has a cultural connotation of you pick your fonda. I mean, fonda started when Mexico was a Spanish colony. There were these like hostels, so really fancy hostels actually, where people will come from Spain and they will stay there in the New Spain, that was the name of Mexico. And they will have accommodation and they will have some food. And the food there in the fondas, it was really interesting because it was a mixture of what Spanish will normally eat and some sort of Mexican heritage ingredients or a few twists. And then from there, it's been evolving to, it's not a hostel anymore, it's more a restaurant. And it's a family-owned business normally, where people will have their houses normally opening their garage door and set a comal, that is these flat tops where we do tortillas in Mexico, a few tables, and people will cook in their kitchen, like in their home kitchen, and then bring like Tupperware with the fillings, and they would just cook for people that are workers in offices or students, you know. And then the interesting thing is that when you're, let's say, in university or you just have your job in the office, you pick your fonda. So you will not, like in Mexico, is not the same as in other countries where you be like, oh, what should I have today? Should we have some Chinese or should we have some Japanese or should we have some Italian food? You every day go to the same place and have the same food. And you pick the place that you go and you just keep going. And that is the Fonda.
But there is a real sense of home comfort there. And I guess I wonder, how is that going to work in a context like Mayfair in London? You know, obviously you run Cole as a very accomplished kind of fine dining version of Mexican food. How are you going to maintain a bit of that kind of naughtiness and edge of the home style environment into this completely different setting?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where Fonda has the meaning of this place that you go every day, but obviously it's our take on it. It's not a house with plastic chairs. It's more of a...
It would be different from Mayfair.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's more about we want to champion Mexican contemporary design as well. So the place... We want it to be, like, there's around the area, there's a lot of really cool art galleries. And the idea of Fonda as well is to be able to be some sort of hub or exhibition for Mexican contemporary art and design, and make people feel that they are in another world. And then also the food, it's our take on as well. Not only of the food that you normally will have in the Fondas, you have a little bit of that, but also it's just... whatever I really like about Mexican regional cuisine. As I like to see it is the food that I will cook at home. If I will make you like some sort of Mexican feast to my friends, and you will have the access of the ingredients that the best, the highest quality ingredients from the UK, but cooking it in a home way instead of having to, like some of the preparations of the dishes at Cole take weeks, sometimes months. So you have to like put these plums in, cook them at 60 degrees for 3 months, and then pass it, and then you make like this, you semi-dehydrate, and then you make a paste with that. You know, there is more like we have this amazing lobster. We marinate it with achiote, and then we make some sort of quesadilla that is called gringa, and we have it inside, put it in the comal, and serve it with salsa. You know, like it's really great ingredients, curated, but in a more approachable way. Like, before creating the dishes at Fonda, I have to ask myself, will you do it at home? But it's still a home of a chef. That is a really different... well, it's not really different, but it's a little bit different than the home of someone that haven't spent, like, I don't know, 17 years cooking, you know?
In the Basque Country, in Copenhagen, and trained as a professional chef, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you personally mentioned the comal there.
Yeah.
What is the importance of the clay comal to the restaurant? What is it? How does it work? What does it do to the dishes and to the kind of cuisine that you're presenting at Fonda?
Yeah, so Mexican food is based around corn. Masa and tortillas are something that are the most important thing in Mexican cooking. It's like pasta, you know, like if you're having Italian food, there will be so many different types of and shapes of pasta. Like fettuccine is not the same as lasagna. But even though it's pasta, it's all about the texture. If you fold it once, or you fold it twice, or if it's thinner or thicker, you will have a different dish. And in Mexico, we do that with masa. So you can have a tortilla that is soft and you can fold and it doesn't have any fat. But if you fry it and it's crispy, it's a tostada, and it can be a gordita, it can be a tlacoyo, it can be a tetela. I mean, like, it can be a triangular shape, it can be a circle, it can be slightly thicker. So it's like, there's a whole world of preparations with masa, and normally what they do is to have the comal either in the markets or in the streets, and then you have the comal. That is this flat pan, that is like a circular flat pan. It's made normally with clay. And then what you do is to get these preparations, you have your big stack of masa, that is this dough made with corn. And then what you do is to make the shapes and put them in the comal. And then in the other side of the comal, you have people that ask you for specific preparation. What these ladies do, they do the preparations in the moment that people ask for them. And then they have the fillings in the other side. You know, so you can ask for a quesadilla with tinga, that is this pulled chicken with smoked chilies. And they have like the pulled chicken with smoked chilies and caramelized onions already made. And then they take the tortilla, put it in the pan, flip it once, put cheese, and then put the filling, and then close it, and then they serve it to you. And then like that with everything else. So then we want to introduce that side of Mexican cooking that it hasn't been introduced as much. I think outside Mexico and mainly in Europe and Asia, and like basically not in the US, because in the US they're really well trained in Mexican food. There is only mainly taquerias or like kind of like fast food Mexican restaurants that are more like about Tex-Mex. You will never have tacos for lunch or for dinner in Mexico. Tacos are something that you have maybe after hours or in between meals, you know. So then we want to bring this side of Mexican cooking that is this comal cooking to London as well. So we're going to have one section of the menu that is going to be called comal, you know.
What about Mexico itself? Obviously, we've talked about inspiration that comes from its most traditional side and kind of memories of the past in certain respects. But is there something about the way that things are evolving in a contemporary sense there as well that is influencing you? Obviously, it's easy to put a contemporary spin on something when you have a degree of distance. And when you're closer to it, sometimes it's harder. But how do you think the contemporary scene is in Mexico right now? And does it influence you as well?
It's incredible. I think Mexico is living a moment that is just unbelievable. When I was a kid, it will be really unusual to go to like a Mexican restaurant. Like it wasn't a thing as Mexican chefs. Most of the chefs were French. So you will go to a restaurant, like a special occasion restaurant, it will be French. Or it will be very, very traditional Mexican restaurant, but it will be just a few and it will be quite old school. But in terms of like, if you want to have something new, you will go to these French restaurants. And in the past 30 years or 20 something years, it's been a complete change. And now it will be rare to go to a restaurant where the chef is not Mexican. We've seen that change of Mexican food being recognized as high quality and not having to compete even with cuisines or outside Mexico, in Mexico. But then also you need to understand the past, like what is being done in history, through history in Mexico in different regions, how the chefs get inspiration from that. So then there's different things happening at the moment in Mexico in different restaurants. So one is to get inspiration from tradition and make it a little bit better executed, applying, I don't know, like professional chef or professional techniques. And then the other one is to just research about the sourcing of like what grows around in Mexico and cook it with an international point of view.
That was Santiago Lastra speaking to me at Midori House. This is the menu. Foraging may have become more popular than it's ever been with chefs and the public alike, but the bounty of edible wild plants and herbs growing in forests and parks still remains a relatively underused resource in today's kitchens. Finnish chef Sami Tallberg believes that adding these ingredients to one's cooking can truly transform a dish. As one of Europe's leading experts on the matter, he has written the Wild Herb Cookbook to encourage others to get involved. Monocle's Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsoff joined Tallberg for a day of foraging near the Finnish capital to learn more about the use of wild herbs in cooking and how chefs can make better use of this free and versatile resource.
Finnish chef and wild herbs expert Sami Tallberg has just taken us foraging in the Helsinki Central Park, just a stone's throw from the city centre. After walking in the park's forests for just a few minutes, his basket is already brimming with wild plants.
So we have dandelion, we have lilacs, we have yarrow, we have garlic mustards, we've got orpine, we've got common sorrel, ground elder and ground ivy. That's a good start.
What kind of stuff can you find here?
Well, actually you have a pretty wide range of edible plants here. Like today we found 13 edible plants, and I would say you could find like 25 edibles from this park.
Finland as a whole and country covered in forest, I mean, how many edible wild plants do we have?
I've discovered so far 120 edibles, so at least that amount. I'm sure there are even more, But I would say that out of all edibles, about like 120 that are gastronomically remarkable.
You are a chef. You've worked in several restaurants all around the world, and you're also this wild herb guru. You've written books about wild herbs and wild plants. What would you say to your chef colleagues working in kitchens in London, New York, Sydney, in bigger cities who think about wild herbs and potentially using them in cooking? What would be your tips?
Well, my tip would be to get to know a forager and then go out with him or her and then experience the healing powers, the magic of foraging, where we as humans connect with nature, and then the following step would be become one with nature by identifying edibles, eating them, and putting the respect of nature into right perspective, and rather than dominate or take stuff from nature, create a relationship between it and let the nature guide you with these edibles, and then start eating them and using them with your cooking. Wild edible plants, I've divided them into 5 categories: salad leaves, herbs, substantial vegetables, aromatics, and then also medicinal plants. So there's an idea how you can use them, and then you would also need to use your own imagination and create your own recipes with it. It's unlimited possibilities, really.
So, Sami, I want to ask you a personal question. What's your favorite wild plant, and how do you use it in cooking?
I would probably say dandelion, because it's just so versatile, and the leaves, flower buds, flower stem, and then later on the flower. There's so many different textures, and it's just beautiful. And it's really, really high in nutritional value as well. But also every year I have, I discover something new or discover something again. Like this year I've discovered the blackcurrant leaves that I like to use with this wild rose foam and strawberries dish by adding another aromatic on top of the Japanese rose petals. That is the blackcurrant leaf, and it really just adds zing and complements the perfume character of wild roses and the strawberries, so it really takes it up to the next level by adding another super aromatic on it.
Next, it was time for Sami to whip up a quick lunch salad from today's bounty. He started with washing and drying the plants.
So what we do with this salad is we just season it with salt, pepper, small done. Quite plentiful of salt, because many of the leaves are so potent in flavor and they have quite a fair amount of bitterness. Pepper, nuts and nutritional yeast, and I've got some kombu seaweed as well. Actually no, I was going to add a little bit more, but no, that's it. Okay.
So Sami has just prepared a salad for us using 13 different herbs that he foraged, and just basically added simple seasoning and sauce to the salad, and it's lovely. I mean, this he could serve in any fine dining establishment in Helsinki, and it's made only using stuff that he found in a forest. Anybody who wants to use herbs, you don't have to be a professional chef, but just anybody who wants to use more wild herbs, how do you get started?
I would definitely recommend to get the forager, get private courses. That's how you really get into it. You can read books, you can read online, and that's a good pre-step. But you really need to do this 5-step program. First one is to open your mind for this realizations of this abundance of these wild edibles around us. That's the first step. Second one would be to get to the nature. Third one is to identify edibles. Fourth one is to pick them yourself. And then fifth one is make a meal out of it and keep eating them. And once you've done those 5 steps with, let's say, with the 12 plants that we foraged today, or actually there was 13, then there's no turning back.
What about, what kind of a mindset do you need when you venture into your nearby forests? And because we're used to going to the supermarket and just picking stuff off the shelves. But I suppose, picking foraging for wild stuff, it's a little bit different. You sort of just can't assume that everything's going to be there, and you need to know where to find them. But just what kind of mindset do you have to be in when you venture into the forest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm happy you asked that. Thank you. I would recommend you to leave your phones away and ideally enter the nature first thing in the morning after your coffee or matcha or whatever, so that you are open for all this beauty, the information and the connection and the transaction you do with nature. And I would like to ask people to enter the nature like you would go to see your grandparents, with deep respect, and be able to, listen to them, let them show you, let them share you the wisdom.
For Monocle in Helsinki, I'm Petri Burtsoff.
Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's George Ruskin.
Thanks, Chiara. Munich's Oktoberfest has come to a close with 7 million litres of beer consumed. Event organisers reported a sharp increase in food sales as more visitors chose to line their stomachs, while the number of people opting for non-alcoholic drinks also rose, with non-alcoholic beer now making up 5% of total sales. The Korean bakery chain Paris Baguette has announced plans to expand into Southeast Asia, signing franchise agreements in Thailand, Brunei and Laos. These deals will strengthen the chain's increasing dominance in Asia and support its strategy to tap into the halal market. As part of this expansion, the company is also set to open a halal bakery plant in Malaysia later this year. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced an agreement with China to lift its import ban on Australian rock lobsters by the end of the year. The ban, imposed in 2020, has cost Australia over $700 million a year. Albanese confirmed the lobsters will return to Chinese markets in time for Lunar New Year in early 2025. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, George. You're listening to The Menu. Keen listeners to the programme will have noticed that South London's Herne Hill is a neighbourhood full of delectable spots for pastries, ice creams and dinners. But one spot in particular has taken the area's culinary reputation one step further. Opened in 2022, Lulu's is a small sibling to more formal and acclaimed restaurant Llewellyn's, and even though its offering is more casual, there's something about its small size, shelves stacked with enticing produce and cosy atmosphere that continues to draw diners in. Monocle's Monica Lillis sat down with head chef Lasse Peterson to discuss his journey to this quiet corner of the city, the importance of staying independent and serving the neighbourhood, and the best menu to do so.
Well, weirdly enough, so I had a music career for a long time, and then I changed into doing food and worked at a couple of places. And then after a while, I went to Moro, which is like Middle Eastern. I always basically end up wanting to get out of my comfort zone. So I worked in like a fine dining neighbourhood restaurant sort of place. Then went to Moro. Then I went to Denmark, really like fine dining. And when I came back from there, I was like, I don't want to see another tasting menu ever again. And like tweezering and all this sort of stuff. I was just like, I felt like I had gone enough the other way from Moro in terms of like things being rustic. And then I went to Weston's Laundry and worked at Weston's Laundry for a long time, and also was a sous chef across to the other restaurants. So like Primer helped open up Jolene, which is obviously like huge neighbourhood restaurants, but in North London. And I just loved it. I loved the weekly changing menu. I loved that you could like basically do lots of different things, lots of different styles. You weren't like necessarily locked down by one terroir. 1 minute you were doing Spanish and French and then Italian. And you were much more led by what was in season rather than this is what we're cooking now, which I loved. I just think that's how everyone should cook. So that really cemented how I wanted to just like cook things. And then so after that I took some time off. I had a baby, so I took 6 months sabbatical, looked after my daughter, and then afterwards I basically was looking for a job, and that position came up for a sous chef here. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. They seem to be sort of doing slightly that. it wasn't quite as seasonal as I'd hoped it'd be, but then it just by coincidence happened that the head chef ended up leaving quite, like he wanted to move on anyway, and then I was offered the position, and then I was like, in my opinion, this is what a neighbourhood restaurant should be. And then it's just gone from then on. I actually live in North East London.
Oh, so long commute.
So I've got a long commute, which means I'm always writing menus. I have so many notes in my phone of just like menu after menu after menu. But it also means that that's why the menu changes a lot. It drives some chefs that work here a little bit bonkers, especially when they first start, because I think a lot of chefs come to restaurants and they work and they get in and they learn to cook in a certain way, where they're maybe more bogged down by like honing of individual dishes, rather than here we cook what I call, we sort of like come to the term, we call it larder cooking. What do we have right now, which is we speak to our meat and fish suppliers every day. What do we have? What do our veg supply have? What's coming in from abroad? What's coming in the UK, which is obviously getting much better. And then what do we have in our larders? So we like use up leftover bits and make vinegars and misos and or garums and all sorts of things, which are like techniques that me and Mikey, who was my sous chef and he's now head chef at Lillis, they're like skills we've basically learned from the various restaurants that we've worked in. Some of them high end, some of them like lower end. And then how do we keep that and emphasize the products that we have right now the best of their whole ability.
So we said earlier this importance of the neighbourhood restaurant and bringing kind of the community together. What do you think makes this neighbourhood so special for it?
I think here it's like a real weird mix of London, which is like basically London, because you have Brixton and you have Dulwich Hill, you have obviously Brockwell Park, which is like nice greenery. People come for different reasons, lots of different backgrounds. You have like younger people, older people. It's a kind of real mix of people who actually live here, which obviously means they all want to have, essentially most people just want to have a nice time and nice food. Nothing too pretentious, nothing too out of their comfort zone. And it makes it really easy, especially in like the summer. We have the big square outside, and lots of people say it feels a bit like being abroad, but you know, people probably say that abroad about going to London. But you don't really find a lot of these places, especially in central London. So to be a neighbourhood restaurant, you sort of, it makes it special in that way.
How much pride do you take in being independent, essentially?
We take a lot of pride in it, and like Katja, who owns it, essentially has given Mike and I like full freedom to do as we please with the menu. Her sort of brief for when we talk about what is the restaurant, it's basically the place you gather with friends or family. So it's a much less food necessarily focused about what it means to go out for dinner. And then the food comes around that, which I think essentially it's about hospitality, not necessarily just like a restaurant. I think one of the things when you have been to, if you go to tasting menus and stuff, you almost feel like that takes center place. A lot of going out for dinner is about the food, but sometimes it feels like it can stop the conversations, like the actual thing of being out, which is a bit of a shame. Obviously it needs to be good, but I think a lot of what we do here is, I think we draw on all our different, everyone has so many different skills and so many different backgrounds, you know, there's a big team here. And it comes together we always like to keep it like quite like natural. Nobody needs white linen and tablecloths and stuff. It's almost like when you know everything, then it's much easier to just lay it out and be a little bit bare and just serve food for what it is, like really good quality, really nice ingredients.
So if we could just talk a little bit, we spoke briefly about the cuisine you like to cook, but can you tell me, I know the menu changes and it's seasonal, but talk me through the menu and the cuisine that you serve.
So in terms of the food, we do like always a pasta dish, and then we'll have basically another larger dish on. Last week we had cod collar. So we get the collars in from cod that we glazed with a little vinegar dressing. And then we had some leftover, again, this sort of larder cooking that had some scallops on earlier in the year. And then we had preserved basically all the roe from these scallops and frozen them over the month. And we basically made a sauce out of those with tomatoes. So, like, again, this sort of larder cooking, what do you have? How do we incorporate that into something fresh? At the moment, it changes a lot, but it's so easy because it's the summer. So there's so much produce. Sometimes it feels like blink and you'll miss it. And it's like, oh, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. If it was up to me, I'd probably change the whole menu every week. But I don't think I could get away with that. Because I sometimes feel like the seasons change so quickly that you miss things all the time. You know, we have not like designated dishes from any type of special cuisine, but I think we go a lot on flavour principles, really. We're making sure everything has texture, fat, acid, and then we sort of cook with that in mind.
Thank you, Monica. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show, Food Neighbourhoods, for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This programme was produced by Monica Lillis, and our sound engineers were Flynn Simons and Lily Austin. Thanks for listening, and until next week.